If I had just let Marco bring the brisket that first summer, if I'd stayed out of the supplier conversations like he wanted, I might still have a partner and a best man. But I wanted to know where our money went, so I opened the binder. The invoice on top said Valley Premium Meats. The boxes in the walk-in said something else entirely. That was the question I should have asked sooner. Why did Marco refuse to let me meet the meat supplier in person? At the time, it sounded reasonable. Marco was better with people than I was. He remembered birthdays, kids' names, whether a delivery guy preferred Dodgers or Angels, and he could turn a late shipment into a free case of sausage by sounding disappointed instead of angry. I was the cook. I knew how long pork shoulder could sit wrapped before it lost bark, how many onions we went through on a rainy Thursday, and how to keep a flat top at the right mood, which is not a technical measurement, but anyone who has worked a grill knows exactly what I mean.
We owned a food truck called Smoke and Squeeze. Barbecue tacos, citrus slaw, agua frescas in clear barrels that always looked better than they poured. We started with one used truck, a smoker trailer we bought from a church in Bakersfield, and a notebook full of recipes that had grease stains before we had permits. Marco and I had been friends since we were 19, when we both worked the nightline at a chain restaurant in Northridge and made terrible money with the confidence of men who thought 30 was old. He stood beside me when I married Tessa. I stood beside him when his daughter Sophia was baptized. We had carried each other through enough ordinary disasters that I mistook history for proof. Our lanes were simple. Marco handled vendors, festivals, catering contracts, and social media. I handled food, prep, scheduling, and most health department paperwork because I had the kind of patience that comes from knowing panic burns more time than forms. It worked because we respected those lanes. Until the lane markers disappeared. The first thing that didn't fit was small enough to ignore. That is how most bad things get past you. Not through a locked door, but through a gap you tell yourself isn't worth bending down to check. It was a Thursday in late April. We had a lunch set up in Burbank, a corporate office that bought 200 tacos every quarter and acted like we were catering the Oscars. I got to the commissary at 5:40 with coffee, a sore left shoulder, and a list in my head. Trim brisket, pull chicken, pickle onions, check propane, load ice. The walk-in smelled like cold smoke and wet cardboard. 3 boxes sat on the lower shelf where our meat order usually landed. Marco was already there, which was unusual but not suspicious by itself. He had a box cutter in one hand and that too wide early morning smile he used when he was behind. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I said, handing him coffee. He took it but didn't drink. His eyes flicked toward the boxes.
The invoices were clipped to our delivery binder on the prep table, just like always. Valley Premium Meats, black logo, fancy serif font, like a steakhouse menu. But the boxes had a plain blue stamp that said VP Wholesale Foods in block letters. Different font, different name, different phone number format. Not dramatic, just wrong, in the way a song is wrong when one note is flat. "These from Valley?" I asked. Marco reached past me for plastic wrap. "Yeah, same guys. They changed packaging." "Again?" He laughed once. "You know suppliers. They'll change the moon if it saves 3 cents. Then I noticed he had already folded 2 box flaps inward, label side down. I don't know what my face did, but he saw something. "What?" he said. "Nothing. I just wanted to ask him about short ribs. Maybe get better pricing." "I'll call." "I can call." I got it. Marco had said I got it 10,000 times. He said it when the ice machine died, when a customer wanted a refund, when a festival organizer forgot our power hookup. It used to make me feel lucky. That morning, it sounded like a door closing. I didn't accuse him. A kitchen at 6 in the morning is not the place to start a friendship autopsy, especially when there's raw meat out and 200 office workers expecting lunch by noon. So I did the first deliberate thing I am still proud of. I took photos. Not like a spy, like a tired business owner pretending to check inventory. When Marco stepped outside to take a call, I snapped pictures of the invoice, the boxes, the side stamp, shipping label, lot number, and the whole shelf, so nobody could say I'd photographed some random box from somewhere else. Then I closed the walk-in and went back to trimming brisket, with my heart doing something stupid in my throat. At 7:12, while Marco loaded Cambros into the truck, I texted Liz. Liz had been my friend before she was my CPA. We met because her husband was obsessed with our smoked chicken and kept hiring us for school fundraisers. She had helped us set up QuickBooks in 2019 after watching me try to track sales tax in a spreadsheet called Final, Use This One. I sent her the photos and wrote, "Is it normal for a supplier invoice logo not to match the boxes?" She didn't answer right away. We served lunch. Marco was normal, which somehow made it worse. He joked with the office receptionist. He gave extra slaw to a guy who said he'd followed us since our first summer. He bumped my shoulder inside the truck and said, "Good rhythm today, chef." Chef. He called me that when he wanted to flatter me or annoy me. Usually both. By 3, we were back at the commissary, cleaning down. My phone buzzed while I was hosing the floor mats. Liz. Not impossible. Companies use DBA names, distributors, rebranded boxes. But that invoice looks odd. Do you have their full legal name or license number? I photographed the vendor info from the binder. Valley Premium Meats LLC. Address in Reseda. License number printed at the bottom. Mostly. Then mostly walk away from him. I stepped outside near the grease bins, where it smelled like old fryer oil and hot concrete. Okay. I looked up Valley Premium Meats LL. I'll be boring. Good. Boring keeps records admissible. She made her boundary clear before hanging up. She could help me understand records I already had access to. She would not hack anything, guess passwords, pull private records, or pretend to be my lawyer. That choice mattered later. She could have backed away. Instead, she drew a line and stood on my side of it. That night, after closing, I stayed at the commissary under the excuse of reorganizing dry storage. Marco left around 8, saying Sophia had a school project. I watched his taillights disappear, then pulled down the banker boxes. The old invoices smelled like dust and stale paper. 2019 was mostly chaos. Handwritten produce receipts, fuel slips, Costco runs, the kind of accounting you do when you were building an airplane after takeoff. But by March, there it was. Valley Premium Meats LLC. Same serif logo, same Reseda address, same invoice format. March 18, 2019. Brisket, pork shoulder. In 2019, we were broke in a way that felt noble. We paid ourselves last and called it reinvestment. My mother slipped me $200 once because she said I looked thin in the face, which is a very Mexican mother way of saying you are failing privately and she has noticed. And there, in the middle of that, was a supplier that did not exist yet. I did not sleep much. Tessa noticed, because she notices everything that happens after midnight. "You smell like smoke and courtroom drama," she said from the bed while I stood in the doorway. I found something weird in the business records. Her face changed. Tessa is a high school counselor. She can hear the thing under the thing before you finish lying to yourself. Marco weird? I looked at the laundry basket between us, like it might offer a third option. I don't know yet. She sat up. "Do you want me to tell you what you tell me?" "No." "Then I won't." I loved her for that. I also hated that she was giving me room to be wrong. The next morning, I logged into QuickBooks before Marco arrived. I had admin access because I was the one who set up the account back when our entire business lived on one laptop and a prayer. Marco had changed dashboard settings, added categories, made it look more professional. But he had not removed me. Maybe he thought I wouldn't look. Maybe he thought cooking made me allergic to accounting. He wasn't completely wrong. I opened the vendor list. Valley Premium Meats sat there, with dozens of transactions, every 2 weeks, sometimes more. The payments were categorized as cost of goods sold. The memos were neat: protein order, special event meat, brisket surcharge, holiday inventory. The amounts were never outrageous. No warehouse, no sales rep, no delivery schedule. Just money leaving like clockwork. I downloaded statements and check images into a folder on my laptop named Insurance Quotes, because paranoia makes you both clever and embarrassing. Then I exported the QuickBooks vendor transactions. I did not alter anything. I did not delete anything. I did not lock Marco out. Every instinct wanted something dramatic, but Liz's voice kept repeating, I did not search Marco's phone. I did not follow him. I did not ask employees to spy. If I was going to blow up the partnership, I wanted the blast to come from facts, not rage. Liz came over on a Sunday with her laptop, a folding calculator she claimed was lucky, and a bag of oranges from her tree. I'm not your attorney, she said at my kitchen table. You've mentioned. I'm also not your hired forensic accountant unless you engage me properly, which you should not do until you talk to a lawyer. You brought oranges to say that? I brought oranges because my tree is overcompensating. Tessa made coffee, then asked if I wanted her to stay. I did, but I said, you don't have to. She looked at Liz, then at me. That's not what I asked. So she stayed, not to solve it, just to be in the room.
Vargas? Tessa said. I felt heat rise up my neck. Marco's mother's maiden name was Vargas. His cousin Elena was at our wedding. She had danced with my uncle and stolen the last piece of tres leches cake. Could be coincidence, I said. Liz gave me a look so dry it could have cured jerky. The public filing listed Suite 318. Liz pulled it up on maps. A UPS store. I knew the strip mall. Dentist, nail salon, poke place that never had anyone inside but somehow stayed open. That doesn't prove Marco, Liz said. It proves the business was registered to someone with a name you recognize, at a mailbox location. It proves enough to ask him. No, she said sharply. Tessa put her hand on my forearm. Liz turned the laptop toward me. You are still thinking like a friend. You want the conversation where he says there's an explanation and you get to stop feeling this. But if he's stealing and you ask too early, he can change records, move money, invent backdated contracts, pressure the cousin, whatever. Complete copies first, then a lawyer.
I hated that she was right. I hated more that some part of me still hoped for a stupid explanation. Maybe Valley Premium Meats had been a DBA before it became an LLC. Maybe old invoices were reprinted with new branding. Maybe Elena handled admin for a legitimate butcher, and Marco was only being weird because he liked control. Hope can be noble. It can also be a very expensive delay. On Monday, I drove to the UPS store with a manila envelope addressed to Valley Premium Meats LLC. Inside was a blank piece of paper. I did not wear a fake uniform or pretend to be anyone official. I walked in like a guy trying to make sure a delivery address was real, because that was true enough. The manager had purple glasses and a tape gun in her hand. Can I help you? Yeah, I'm trying to drop something for Valley Premium Meats. Suite 318? She glanced at it. Mailbox, yeah. So not an office? She gave me the look retail workers give when customers discover how addresses work. They rent a box. We sign for mail.
Got it. I just didn't want it lost. She turned toward the wall of boxes, then paused. Elena's box gets a lot of confused delivery guys. People think it's a warehouse because of the name. My stomach tightened. Elena Vargas? I asked before I could stop myself. That sounds right. You want me to put it in? I almost handed over the envelope, then pictured Elena opening a blank page and calling Marco. You know what? I need to add something. I'll come back. It was not official proof, the way a subpoenaed mailbox agreement would be. I did not plan to build a legal case on it, but it changed my belief. The line from fake supplier to Marco was no longer a line I had drawn in anger. It had a family name on it. That afternoon, Marco asked why I was quiet. Just tired, I said. You're always tired. This is premium tired. You selling that now? Premium tired? He grinned. Artisanal exhaustion. Small batch. I laughed despite myself, and that laugh hurt so much I had to turn away. The next receipt was the one that stopped me from bargaining with myself. Liz and I spent 2 evenings categorizing every payment to Valley Premium Meats from 2019 to 2023. We sat at my kitchen table with bank statements, QuickBooks exports, and invoices stacked by year. Tessa put our son to bed and brought us tea. Neither of us drank. The total came to $47,200. Not all at once, not enough in any single month to bankrupt us, but enough to explain why we were always short when we should have been catching up. Enough to explain the credit card balance we carried through 2 summers. Enough to explain why I postponed replacing the truck's hood vent and spent 3 weeks cooking in heat that made my shirt feel boiled. The pattern was ugly in a quiet way. Payments started small in late 2019. They paused a couple times, resumed, grew. Then, in 2022, they spiked. I knew those dates before Liz said anything. That's when your mom had surgery. My mother's knee replacement had turned into an infection, then a second surgery, then 6 weeks where I drove her to appointments before prep and slept in pieces. Marco had stepped up then. He covered events, he handled ordering. He told me, family first, man. I got the truck. I remembered standing in the hospital parking structure, crying into a steering wheel because I was too tired to do it upright. I remembered Marco texting me a photo of the smoker loaded. Thumbs up emoji. No worries, chef. During that period, Valley Premium Meats billed us almost every week. I got up from the table and walked into the backyard because I did not want my son to hear the sound that came out of me. Tessa followed, but did not touch me right away. She stood beside me under the string lights we always forgot to turn off.
I know. He used that. She waited. Then I said the thing I was ashamed of. I don't want to ruin his life. Tessa looked at me.
I watched Marco watch her. There was nothing fake about his face. For a while, I stood by the grill with Abel, who was burning chicken in a way that suggested optimism more than skill. "You look like hell," he said. "Food truck glamour." Across the yard, Camila reached into a bag and pulled out a small case, the kind people use for insulin pens or specialty meds. Abel followed my gaze and lowered his voice. "Poor kid. They finally got her on the new treatment, I think." "What treatment?" He looked at me. "Sophia's thing, you know." I did not know, or I knew only Marco's version. Immune issues, appointments, insurance being insurance. Abel frowned. "I thought Marco told you." "Told me what?" "It's rare. Some genetic blood thing. I don't know the name. Camila had a GoFundMe for a minute, but took it down. Insurance denied the specialist at first. It was a whole mess." "When?" "Late 2019 diagnosis, maybe? The expensive stuff started after. Don't say I said anything. I just assumed. You and Marco."
He stopped, because we both knew what he meant. Best friends know. I looked at Marco across the yard. He was kneeling in front of Sophia, tying her shoelace. She put one hand on his head for balance, like he was furniture she trusted. The story shifted, not in a way that excused him. Nothing excused it. But greed is simple to hate. Desperation has hooks. That night, I searched my memory and found all the things I had missed or filed under life. Marco selling his motorcycle, Camila going back to work part-time before she seemed ready, the way he stopped talking about buying a house, the time he asked if we could delay our own draws by 2 weeks because cash flow's tight, and I said yes without checking. 6 months after Sophia's diagnosis, the Valley payments started. He hadn't stolen because he wanted a boat. He had stolen because his kid was sick, and then he kept stealing because a bad solution that was the week I almost let it go. I told myself we could restructure. I could confront him privately. He could pay it back over time. Nobody had to know. We would protect Sophia from adult ugliness. We would protect Camila. We would protect the friendship, or what was left of it. Then I opened the 2022 statements again and saw the charges during my mother's surgery. He did not just take when he was desperate. I laughed once.
The policy was trust Marco. She did not smile. That is common. It is not a policy. I gave her copies of everything. Invoices, registry page, bank records, QuickBooks exports, spreadsheet, public filing showing Elena Vargas as registered agent. I told her about the UPS store comment, but said I didn't want to rely on it. Good instinct, she said. The public filing is enough to establish a connection worth investigating. The bank and accounting records establish payments. The impossible incorporation date is significant. The false vendor may create tax issues if deductions were taken improperly. Am I in trouble? Potentially exposed if the business filed returns deducting fraudulent expenses. But you are also a victim and co-owner who discovered and documented it. We handle this carefully. Can I report him? Yes, but you asked me for nonviolent leverage, not revenge theater. I don't want him arrested in front of his kid. Then we start with a civil resolution. Dissolution or buyout, forensic accounting.
That word sat between us. I can't say pay me or I call the IRS. You can say these records indicate false vendor payments and tax filings may need correction. You can say if we cannot resolve this with counsel, you will pursue all available remedies, including reporting to tax authorities. Precision matters. Priya drafted the letter. It had no dramatic insults. It said the company had identified irregularities related to Valley Premium Meats, LLC. It attached a summary of payments and the public registration discrepancy. It requested a meeting with counsel present to discuss dissolution, repayment, and corrective filings. It preserved documents. It told him not to alter records. Before we sent it, I had one last ordinary day with Marco. We worked a Saturday event at a brewery in Glendale. The line was long, the sun was mean, and the generator coughed all afternoon like it had smoked longer than the brisket.
At one point, he looked back and said, "Remember our first brewery gig? We ran out of pork in 40 minutes and served chips with apology salsa." Apology salsa was underrated, I said. It was ketchup with lime. And apologies. He laughed. I almost told him then. Not accused him. Just said, please tell me there is something I don't know. Please give me back the man from the pizza box in my garage. The one who sketched a prep table beside me and wrote, "We split everything, even the mistakes," in a notebook because we thought mistakes meant bad parking or oversalted beans. But facts are not less true because the liar is tired, or funny, or scared, or loved by a child. Priya sent the letter Monday morning. Marco called me 13 times before noon. I did not answer. Priya had told me not to. Around 1, he came to the common. He walked in holding the letter, face gray. "What is this?" "A letter," Liz said, because Liz has never been afraid of being unhelpfully literal. His eyes moved to her, then Tessa, then me. "You brought people?" "I brought my wife. Liz helped organize records." "You went through records?" "Our records." He flinched like the word "our" had teeth. "Can we talk outside?" he asked. "No," Tessa said. It was the first time she had spoken, and both of us looked at her. She didn't raise her voice. "You've had years of private conversations. This one isn't private." Marco swallowed. His hands shook around the paper. "It's not what you think." I felt something in me sag. Not because I believed him. Because every guilty person says that, and I had wanted him to be more original. "Then tell me," I said. He looked at Liz. "Not with..." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. After everything is kind of the point. You don't understand what we were dealing with. "Sophia?" I said. The anger fell off him so fast it scared me. "Don't," he whispered. "I know she was sick. I know insurance denied things. I know you were desperate." His eyes filled. "Then you know. No, I know why you started. I don't know why you kept going. He sat down on a flour bucket, like his legs had quit. The compressor in the walk-in clicked on. Somewhere outside, a truck backed up with 3 polite beeps. Marco rubbed both hands over his face. I was gonna put it back. When? I don't know. Before or after my mom's surgery? That hit. He looked at me. Really looked, and I saw him remember. Not the spreadsheet date. The hospital. The way I had leaned on him. I'm sorry, he said. It was the first true thing he had offered, and it was nowhere near enough.
His lawyer called Priya the next day. The process took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of working beside each other as little as possible, splitting events, using staff as buffers, letting texts become formal and stupid. Please confirm pickup of propane. Confirmed. Register cash counted. Attach receipt. A friendship reduced to documentation. Marco did not deny the payments once counsel was involved. He admitted Valley Premium Meats was not a real supplier. Elena had registered the LLC after he told her he needed a billing entity for side purchasing. According to his lawyer, she did not understand the full purpose. I don't know if that was true. I chose not to chase her down because my fight was with Marco, and collateral damage is still damage even when you are angry. He said he used the money for medical bills, travel to specialists, prescriptions, and later to cover personal debt created by... A forensic accountant reviewed our records, not because the scheme was sophisticated, but because a neutral report gave the dissolution weight. The fake supplier payments totaled $47,200. There were also tax implications. Priya coordinated with a tax professional to amend returns if necessary. That part cost money I did not have, and patience I had even less of. The final agreement was signed on a Tuesday afternoon in a notary's office in Van Nuys, between a laundromat and a place that sold discount mattresses. Revenge, as it turns out, often happens under fluorescent lights while someone's printer jams. Marco transferred his ownership interest in Smoke and Squeeze to me for a reduced buyout value reflecting the misappropriated funds. The $47,200 became a repayment obligation built into the dissolution agreement, with monthly payments he could realistically make and acceleration if he defaulted. His share of final distributions was offset. He resigned from all bank access, vendor accounts, permits were transferable, and social media control. He agreed to cooperate with amended tax filings. If he breached, the signed admissions and records could be used in civil action, and nothing prevented me from reporting the false vendor scheme to tax authorities.
It was not clean. It was not triumphant. It was enforceable. Before we went in, Marco and I stood outside by the parking meters. He looked thinner. I probably did too. My lawyer says not to say much, he said. Then don't. He nodded. A bus hissed at the corner. Someone pushed a cart full of laundry past us. I told myself it was borrowing, he said. I stared at the notary's window. From me? From the business. That's me. I know. No, I said. You know now. He closed his eyes. I wanted to ask about every day. The donut. Inside, he signed where the notary pointed. His signature looked smaller than I remembered. Mine looked like a stranger's. Afterward, he placed his key ring on the table. Truck key, commissary key, storage lock, the little brass bottle opener we bought at a gas station during our first catering run because we forgot one and thought that was hilarious. I guess that's it, he said. I picked up the keys. Yeah, I said. That's it. For the first month after Marco left, everyone told me the same thing in different voices. At least you own it all now. At least you caught it. At least he's paying it back. At least it didn't get worse. At least is what people say when they need your loss to have a handle. Owning the whole truck meant I worked more and laughed less.
I hired a part-time front window guy named Devin, who was reliable, polite, and had no idea when I needed a towel unless I asked like a normal person. I took over vendor calls and discovered I hated vendor calls. I learned that brisket pricing is less a number than a weather event. I learned how many passwords Marco had known by memory. I learned our Instagram followers did not care about my emotional growth. They wanted to know if the mango agua fresca was back. Money was tight. The repayment plan helped, but not quickly. The forensic accountant and attorney fees hurt. Tessa and I postponed replacing our home water heater, even though it made us sound like a submarine in distress. My mother asked about Marco twice before I told her enough to make her stop. She cried, then got angry, then asked if I was eating. I was eating, mostly standing up. The worst part was not the workload. It was memory becoming evidence. I would be loading charcoal and remember Marco insisting on handling that one supplier. I would find an old receipt and wonder if the lunch we ate that day was paid for with stolen money. I would drive past the hospital where my mother had surgery and remember his text. "I got the truck. No worries, chef." Every good thing from those years grew a shadow. Liz told me that was normal. "You're auditing the friendship," she said one night when she stopped by the truck for dinner. "I don't recommend it." No one does, until they have to. She paid for her tacos, even though I tried to refuse. "Boundaries," she said, tapping the card reader. Tessa made a different choice around month 3. She told me I needed to decide whether I wanted to run Smoke and Squeeze or punish myself with it. I thought you were going to say sell. I'm saying choose. If you keep it because it's yours, not because losing it would mean he took one more thing. That landed harder than any legal letter. So I made changes. I switched meat suppliers, obviously, and visited the warehouse in person. I shook hands with a woman named Denise who wore steel-toe boots and could discuss pork shoulder margins like poetry. I put a vendor approval rule in writing, even though there was no partner left to approve with. I hired a bookkeeper for 4 hours a month, which felt luxurious, until I realized peace costs less than suspicion. I changed the truck menu board. Not the whole concept, just enough to stop feeling like I was working inside a photograph. And I kept making the food. Because the recipes were mine too. The smoke ring was mine. The slaw was Tessa's suggestion from 2020, when she said everything we made was brown and delicious, but visually depressed. The agua frescas were my mother's, scaled up badly at first, then better. The truck had Marco's fingerprints all over it, but it did not belong only to the damage. Marco made the first 3 payments on time, then a 4th. Priya's office forwarded confirmations without comment. I never asked where he worked after. Abel said he'd taken a logistics job. Camila sent Tessa a message once, not apologizing exactly, not defending either. Just, "I'm sorry for all of it." Tessa showed me and asked if she should answer. "That's up to you," I said. She wrote, "I hope Sophia stays well." Nothing more. That was grace, measured carefully. 6 months after the notary, I found the old notebook. I was cleaning the garage because Tessa had threatened to label every mystery box divorce exhibit, which was funny because it was only about 20% a joke. Behind a stack of folding chairs and a broken canopy, I found a plastic bin from our first summer. Inside were old menu drafts, permit copies, a roll of faded raffle tickets, and the notebook. It was black, spiral-bound, warped from heat. I took it to the truck the next morning without really deciding to. After lunch service, I sat at the prep table and opened it. The first pages were recipes. My handwriting was blocky and impatient. Marco's was slanted, fast, full of arrows and underlines. There were notes about equipment, jokes about names we rejected, a terrible sketch of a pig wearing sunglasses, and a list titled "Rules so we don't kill each other." Rule 1. No hiring cousins without discussion. I laughed once, then had to stop reading for a minute. Rule 2. Taste before serving. Rule 3, if one of us is mad, eat first, argue second. 4-4, in Marco's handwriting, underlined twice. We split everything, even the mistakes. I sat there with my hand on the page. Back then, it had meant we were in it together.
It was supposed to be a promise against blame, but promises are only as strong as what people do when keeping them becomes expensive. I thought about tearing the page out. I thought about throwing the whole notebook away. Instead, I set it on the prep table and finished closing. I wiped the flat top, I labeled the leftover slaw, I checked the locks on the new vendor cabinet, because apparently I am a man with a vendor cabinet now. I turned off the light over the service window and stood for a moment in the dim truck, listening to the refrigerator hum. Then I picked up the keys from the hook by the door. There used to be 2 sets hanging there, mine and Marco's, side by side, the bottle opener knocking against the metal when the truck moved. Now there was one. I stepped down into the empty parking lot. The evening smelled like asphalt cool.
There was no one beside me to hand the second set to.